Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, January 17th, and I am super excited because today I have the great Sheriff Mark Lamb from Pinal County joining us, and he is also running for U.S. Senate, and I'm proud to back him up 100%. So I'm going to bring Mark on. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Marianne. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for the intro.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I know you have a very busy schedule, and I so appreciate that you've taken the time. I can see you're like pulled off the side of the road or something, aren't you?
I am. That's where I do a lot of these interviews because I'm always on the move.
Yeah. Well, something interesting that I came across last night while I was reading up a little bit. I mean, I know you very well, but reading up on you a little bit more is I lived in the Philippines.
Nice. In Manila?
Well, my dad was in the Air Force, so we were at Clark Air Force Base.
Yep.
And did your family ever go up to Baguio, that resort up in the mountains?
We did. It's beautiful there.
Yeah. I've got faint memories as a child being there.
Likewise. I was 11 between 11 and 12 is when I was there.
I was a lot younger than that, but I just thought that was funny because you don't come across a lot of people who've lived in the Philippines. So, but you've had a very interesting law enforcement career. You started off on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, and then went on to join the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. And then you were elected sheriff in 2017. So give us a little background, Mark, of what you've done.
Yeah, so look, I didn't even ever set out to be a police officer. It was never something I didn't grow up as a young boy thinking I want to be a police officer. Nobody in my family is, nobody in my wife's family. I was minding my own business, owned my own businesses, and I had never thought about being a cop until my neighbor asked me to go on a ride along when I was 33 years old. And I said, yeah, you know what? I don't got anything else to do. I'll go. Went on one ride along, and that was at the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, which is right next to Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale, Arizona. And I went home that morning after that ride along, woke my wife up and said, hey, I'm going to be a cop. And so 6 months later, I was in the academy and starting my law enforcement career. Quickly, I got into to be a gang and drug detective. That was kind of my passion, was protecting communities from those violent offenders, those gang members that were selling drugs and committing violent acts. Had a very successful time at Salt River. And it was actually under the Obama administration that I was like, you know what? I just don't like the direction the country's going. I think that government is undermining the rule of law. I think that law enforcement needs some stronger leadership. And so I made the decision to run for sheriff. And to do that, I had to move and departments, and I went to Pinal County so that I could get my feet wet in that agency before I ran for sheriff. And ran for sheriff in 2015, 2016, got elected at the end of 2016, and have been the sheriff since then. Took office January 1st, 2017. So I'm in my 8th year. I've loved every bit of it, and feel very blessed to have been able to serve the people. So that is like the cliff notes of my law enforcement career right there.
Well, and I saw you many times in D.C. during Trump's administration. You immediately got heavily involved in a lot of the American sheriffs who are, all about the Constitution and upholding the law across the United States. And that was important to me as an Angel mom and the whole Angel family community, because we know we have sheriffs like you who understand the law and protecting our communities. And so, what was it like interacting with a lot of those sheriffs across the nation and realizing that you're one of them, you're one of the good guys?
I think it's been great. I've loved doing it. And I think more sheriffs, there's a lot of sheriffs that think the same way. Now, most people don't realize a lot of the counties across this country are very small, very, only a handful of deputies, if any at all. That's usually the case when it comes to sheriff's offices. But there are several of those, and there's a lot of sheriffs from big organizations that truly believe in protecting the Constitution. We're not really politicians. People will say, well, Sheriff, you get so politically involved. No, the politicians are making these political issues that shouldn't be political. Securing our border shouldn't be a political issue. Protecting our communities, enforcing the law, not letting people steal stuff, those should not be political issues. Politicians and the media have made them political. And when we respond to them, then they say, well, you're being political. No, we're just trying to enforce the law and do our job. Unfortunately, you guys made that political. And so there's a lot of sheriffs that feel the same way. And one of my best experiences in my life, I've had a lot, but one of my best experiences was with you in the Oval Office when President Trump signed a bill, and being able to stand right there in that Oval Office. And I know you were there that day, and we've spent many times, like you said, in DC.
It was signing his first veto.
Yes, the very first veto he signed. Yeah. You and I were in that room. What a surreal experience. I mean, next thing you know, they take us in this room and we're standing in the Oval Office, and I'm like, I'm in the Oval Office. It was crazy.
With one of the best presidents we've ever had. But, you know, it's true. They put sheriffs in a tough situation, because not only are you trying to uphold the law with some of these politicians, but you're fighting against the policies that they're making that are going against the Constitution and against the laws that are already in place in our country and in our counties and in our states. So it's a bad position for you to be put in. But the fact that so many laws are ignored is the problem in this country, I think, because a lot of the issues that are happening at the border are because laws are being ignored and executive orders are being used to push an agenda.
That's exactly right. And, you know, we've been trying to be hyper focused on what the law is. Now, the left will come out, and they've really tried to come out and say, well, you're in a constitutional sheriff, you're following your own laws. I actually had an interview with somebody the other night on News Nation, and we were talking about being a constitutional person, somebody who believes in the Constitution. I said, well, how did this become negative? How did upholding the oath that not only I took, but every other elected official in this country? I think the question should be, why are they not upholding their oath to the Constitution? I take it very serious. And he was saying, well, I don't want sheriffs determining what laws they follow. And I said, look, we didn't ask to be put in that position either. We didn't ask to be put in a trick bag. But when you pass a law that is repugnant to the Constitution, which we know from Marbury versus Madison of 1803, when they issued the order that said that this is what keeps governments in their lane, you know, the three branches of government, and that the courts should be able to determine if a law is unconstitutional. But until then, we're the ones that are out there facing this, the reality of, is an executive order and a mandate. Those are, first of all, not laws. And we know for a fact, because the Supreme Court has overturned many laws, that laws are unjustly, like unconstitutional, are passed within state legislatures or town city councils. And then we're faced to say, look, we're not going to uphold that law because it violates a constitutional law. And so I was telling him, if you put me in that trick bag, if there's any ambiguity, I'm always going to side with the Constitution.
Right. And a lot of these executive orders and policies that Biden has put into place regarding the border, you know, we've got, and there's been a lot of talk lately about the SB 1070 that Russell Pierce was very involved in getting passed here in Arizona. And it went to the Supreme Court, but there was only a few fractions of that SB 1070 that were actually removed by the Supreme Court. And a lot of that bill stands today. And I'm amazed at how much of it is ignored, even by law enforcement, you know, by the City of Mesa Police Department, by the City of Phoenix Police Department. And that's where I think we need to get back to is, let's really have a push for legislators statewide and nationwide to really go back to the state constitution, the laws that are in place, and understand where we are. And then on top of that, Mark, you've got judges who interpret the law instead of just enforcing the law, you know, when it comes to crimes that are committed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, taking the second thing you talked about first, that's what's wrong with this country, is nobody's staying in their lane. Nobody is following. Like, the executive branch is not supposed to legislate. You have the ATF passing administrative things saying now this is a law. You've got the president passing executive orders. You've got the New York mayor passing executive orders. These are not things that you're supposed to you're not part of the legislative branch. Then you have the legislative branch, which has basically allowed these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to just buffalo them every time chance they get. And then you have the judicial branch, like you said, that are making rulings, basically legislating from the bench. SB 1070 and the Ninth Circuit is one of those. People have been asking me lately what I feel about Texas saying we're going to arrest you if you're in our state illegally. I love it, because I thought that law should have been challenged a long time ago. The ruling that the Ninth Circuit issued, gutting parts of SB 1070, I thought should have been challenged at a higher level and taken all the way to the Supreme Court. Because while we recognize it's the federal government's responsibility to secure our borders, what recourse does the state have when the federal government fails to do their job? And SB 1070 would have been that recourse for us. And I think now this is all coming back forefront, like you said, and it should be challenged. And let's determine what kind of states' rights we have under the 10th Amendment. And let's get some of those rights back from the federal government, because we have not just the three branches of government, but federal government in general has far overreached what the founding fathers originally designed for them to do and be. And they have encroached exponentially on what state rights are. And I think they have completely violated the 10th Amendment.
I agree 100%. One thing that I was really sad about, and I know a lot of Angel families are kind of feeling the same way, was to see the 287G program just kind of go by the wayside. Is there any remnants of that even happening down there in Pinal County?
Yeah, we are still a 287G jail. So let me explain to your listeners. So there's 287G is a program established by the federal government, which allows local agencies to work in conjunction with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So the Border Patrol controls the border. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, those guys will control the actual ports. ICE will control who stays and who's whether they're in jail or whether they go out and they're removed. They have a removal portion of it. And then HSI is Homeland Security Investigations. They will go out and investigate cartels, smugglers. They investigate those Homeland Security crimes. Now, ICE has a program called 287G. There was two components to that. One component was through the jails. What would happen is if somebody came to my jail, which we still have in effect, and they were not in this country legally, but committed a state crime, which is why they were in my jail, then we would process them, go through it and we would say this person's here illegally. And we had people that had been trained by ICE, 287G authorized deputy detention officers. They would go through the program with, the computer program with ICE and determine that they're here illegally. We would notify ICE and say this person got arrested for domestic violence or ag assault or murder, and we notify ICE that they are being held. When they are done with their state charges, we would notify ICE, and ICE would either come pick them up or say no. That's one portion. The other portion of ICE is ERO, which is they're out in the field actually removing people who have been determined by the courts to be here illegally. So a lot of these people that are on false asylum claims who have said, hey, look, I'm running from this or that. Most of these asylum claims we are seeing are false asylum claims. Every single one of them that comes across the southern border is a false asylum claim because they were in Mexico first and they should have claimed asylum in the first country they got to. After they left their respective countries. So these are false asylum claims. The judges are ultimately going to say, 5 to 7 years from now, whenever they go to court, they're going to say, hey, you don't have a legit asylum claim. It would be then ICE's job to remove these people from the country. So I wanted to give some context to the people that understand. But yes, we still do 287G. Let me tell you one difference. And this, I know your family was impacted firsthand. Right where we used to have, let's say 10 people that were in our custody who were here illegally on state crimes, ICE would come pick up 8 of them during the Trump administration. If they pick up 1 or 2 of them now, I'd be surprised. They don't pick hardly any up, which means once they're through with their state charges, we are forced to release them into public again.
And see, So what the Biden administration and Mayorkas probably more in general has done is basically just defunded that part of ICE, and they're not giving them the money and the manpower and the authority to go out and do this anymore. Right?
That's right. And when you think of, I want to put into perspective for your listeners just how severe this problem is. People say, well, if Trump comes back, we're going to remove everybody. And you cannot reward bad behavior. You cannot reward illegal behavior with amnesty because they broke the law to come here. We have a process in place for those who want to come to this country illegally. Legally, we are all for it. I know you are, I am, but we want you to go through the legal process. There are only 386 ICE agents in the entire state of Arizona. And not every one of those are ground guys. You know, this is the whole entire agency is 386 in Arizona. Every day in Arizona, we are averaging 2,000-3,000 people coming across our southern border into Arizona. You do the math. We don't even have enough agents to take everybody out that came today, let alone everybody out that came over the last 3 years, which I think is really about 12 to 15 million people. So when you say, yes, we're going to remove everybody, we only have 386 ICE agents. So we got a lot of work to do, and there's going to be a huge lift to be able to fix this problem. But that's one of the issues is we don't have near the agents for what's coming in every day.
It's disgusting what this administration has done. And I just loathe Mayorkas. And every time I see him on TV with that smirk on his face, when he's in a committee hearing and testifying in Congress, and the way that he lies is amazing to me. And, you know, I did a deep dive into his career and had a podcast completely devoted to him. And it was interesting to see how he worked his way through the system and how he was at USCIS, you know, Deputy Secretary of Department of Homeland Security under Obama, and now where he is now. And I can see where, you know, he figured out how to build the system and do what he needed to do. And it really surprises me that even though he's a legal immigrant, that we would have an immigrant in charge of Department of Homeland Security. And I think that they've lost the focus of why Department of Homeland Security was even formed. And they're not even doing the job that they were meant to do.
No, they are failing the American people. And when you hear the term bureaucrat, you will hear me use the word bureaucrat. There are elected officials like myself. I've been elected, congressmen, senators. Those are elected officials. That's part of the republic. We as a people have elected them to represent us back in Washington, D.C. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And the reason they want to call it a democracy all the time is because a democracy is governed by the majority. So they want to make you think that the majority of the people believe this, so we're just going to do it. But that's not how the republic works. The republic works based on you being accountable to our representatives that we have sent back to D.C. And like you said, Mayorkas is just so flippant and so dismissive and doesn't give any answers when he's in front of the people that we have elected to go represent us back in Washington, D.C. And that is a bureaucrat. A bureaucrat is somebody who wasn't elected. But now bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. are the ones that are running and are putting their political ideologies into place. He was never a Border Patrol agent. He was never an ICE agent, a HSI agent, a CBP agent. He was a lawyer. Yeah. It's the same with Christopher Wray. He was a lawyer. And they took a lawyer, a bureaucrat, and put him in charge of these agencies. And they feel like they don't have to respond to the American people. And that's what's wrong with America, is we're being governed by bureaucrats. And the people that have been sent, that our republic was designed to send back to represent us, have lost their power.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of those bureaucrats. And that's a great analogy. And I'm glad you said it, because that's something that I'm going to use, you know, when I'm talking about Mayorkas, because you're 100% correct. I don't think the American people would have voted him into place. He went through such a tough, hearing session, and there was a lot of holdouts on the Republican side. And I just wish they would have stayed strong and held out. They knew he was not the right person for the job. But That's a great way of putting it. I mean, you've got the Council of Foreign Relations, you've got all of these non-governmental entities in DC who are running the show. And that's
right.
that's how government, well, non-government has grown to take over the government.
That's right.
And
And the
and
ATF is a and the ATF is a good example too. You have bureaucrats, people that were placed in position, most of the time lawyers, at the head of these agencies, and then they do a review. They know that they can't get these gun laws passed, so they'll go in and do an administrative ruling saying, "Oh, you can no longer have wrist braces, or you can no longer have this trigger." And they have not gone through the proper channels of legislative channels to make these laws illegally, yet they want to charge American citizens with felonies for possessing something that was at one point legal to purchase until they made it an administrative ruling. That's bureaucracy at its best. And that is what the founding fathers built this country because they didn't want that. And yet we've allowed it to happen.
Yep. I want to change the subject here and talk about sanctuary cities and counties and states. I went back to DC during Trump's administration and attended a roundtable with some law enforcement and politicians and talked about how sanctuary cities affect, angel families, American citizens, and they're so lenient on illegal criminals. In North Carolina, you've got a child rape epidemic going on by illegals back there. This has been going on for years and years and years. And what really made me mad was they had made it an anti-sanctuary state, a Republican governor. And in 2018, when you had a bunch of sheriffs, different sheriffs elected in there, I think McFadden is one of them, they immediately made their counties sanctuary counties. And I read all of these articles where these illegals are raping children. And I mean, it may be 15, 16 counts because of the different lewd acts that they've done with the child. And McFadden's sheriff department will bring them in and book them and release them right back out onto the streets. And so you look at New York, what's happening there, and you look at Chicago and all these big cities, they were proud to be sanctuary cities and proud to hang that banner out and fight against the Trump administration from taking that designation away from them. So now they're reaping the rewards of being a sanctuary city, right? And
Oh, absolutely.
how do you feel about, like, if Arizona started busing some of these people out? I don't think a lot of the illegals stay here in Arizona, though, do they, Mark? They kind of move on.
No, the majority of these people are not staying here. This is become an America problem. They're shifting these people all over the country. And what we're like a pass-through county in Pinal County, where everybody has to come through Pinal County to get to Phoenix. But once they get to Phoenix, most of them leave this state, especially the ones that are not from Mexico. The ones that we tend to keep are from people from Mexico or Guatemala who live close by. They want to work here for a few years. A lot of these people from Africa and from China and from all those places, they're just spreading all over the country. And you're right. As to the point of the sanctuary cities, these people were self-righteous. They were virtue signaling to the rest of the country, like, we're better than you because we're going to take people no matter where they came from. But when the rubber met the road and they started getting busloads of people, they couldn't even handle a few thousand people. They already were crying about it, asking the government for subsidies. And they were saying, oh, we can't have these people here. Nothing, there's karma. We all know what karma is. And karma reached out and bit them in the butt. And it was because they were virtue signaling and pretending that they were better than the rest of us. The reason why we cannot tolerate sanctuary cities is because, in the essence, you're basically condoning the fact that they broke the law to come here in the first place. We cannot forget the fact that I don't care how good you are. You could be Mother Teresa for all I know. If you cross the border illegally, that is a crime. And guess what? I'm forced to hold good people accountable all the time that make mistakes, that violate a state law, and they get charged. It doesn't mean they're not a good person, but it's also not it's not a reason of why not to charge them. Though there are good people coming across, They did not follow. They broke the law. They broke an Arizona law or a state or federal law, and they should not be. You cannot reward them. You have to hold them accountable, or else we will have no society.
Right. And I've talked about this before on my podcast, but Doug Ducey changed the laws here in Arizona because a while back, you and like myself and an illegal could be charged with the same crime, and an illegal would only have to serve 50% of their sentence, whereas me as an American citizen, I would have to serve at least 85 to 100% of my sentence. And so thank goodness that was changed. But that's the case in a lot of states across the United States. You've got illegal criminals coming over here committing crimes, and they know they will only have to serve 50% of their sentence and be released back out into the country. And especially now they'll be released because we have no ICE enforcement and deportations. And these people are understanding the system, and they know they can go to California and steal up to $950 a pop when they go into a store. I mean, they're figuring this all out. And I can't even believe the lawlessness that I see in so many videos back in New York and in Los Angeles. And I pray every day for your safety, for law enforcement safety, because this administration has really created a dangerous country for citizens to live in. And even though you may not feel it now, folks, you will start seeing the effects of this as long as these borders remain open, because people are just pouring over. And you heard Mark say it's 2,000 to 3,000 a day that are coming over the Arizona border. What is your...
And they are feeling it. And I just want to say they are feeling it. You know what the number one issue was in Iowa, which is why President Trump had such a significant victory? The number one issue for people in Iowa, in the middle of this country, was border. That was their number one issue. Economy being the second issue. And that is the number one issue. No matter where I go, border and economy are the number one and two. But I think border has consistently, for the most part, been the number one issue. And that was in Iowa. So it's becoming the issue for everybody, no matter what race, religion, politics you are. Everybody's starting to see that the border is the primary issue.
Well, and honestly, the border affects our economy. So
100%.
There's, what was it? $280 billion goes out of our economy in remittances from these illegals who are working in our country, sending money home to their families. That is leaving our economy and going to enrich another country. And these countries are getting foreign aid on top of the remittances that are coming. And what is the government doing? Like in Mexico, when remittances are sent to families, the Mexican government taxes it as it enters, through Western Union and all those sorts of things, through their central bank. And so that is something, I've had conversations with you about it, but way in the past, but we need to have remittances. And although there have been some chatter on a federal level, I really want to keep remittances. And this is something that I'm going to work on it when I get elected into the state legislation. I want to really work on having remittances on the money that leaves Arizona, and to be able to use that money to, help law enforcement buy the equipment that they're short on, to put towards the border wall, to do the things to help with their shortages in the schools, to help with the things that these people don't pay taxes for, yet their families are benefiting off of it. School, and all those sort of things.
And Marianne, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm one of the few people that will talk about the economic impact that the border has on us. Back when President Trump was trying to run his bill for the border bill, he was asking Congress for $5 billion, and that was to build a wall, that was to increase employees. There was
Hope you froze up, Mark.
Yeah, my truck was telling me that I've been sitting here too long. So back when President Trump was running, he had a $5 million border bill. At that time, they estimated that lost tax revenue from people that were in this country illegally was already at $130+ billion a year. not to mention the money that you said that they send to their families in their respective countries, which means it creates another hole in our economy because that's not money going back into our economy. So the money leaves our economy, not and also there's no taxes. They're not even paying the taxes for all of this other stuff that we have to pay taxes for that they came here illegally that creates. It's a whole big web. But can you imagine what that lost tax revenue is now, Marianne, with an extra 12? Because I think the number is at least probably 12 million over the last 3 years under this administration. But by their own admittance, it's about 8 or 9 million. Can you imagine just how much more tax revenue we're losing every single year or every day from taxes not being paid on money they're earning under the table, and then how much more money is being sent back and what that's doing to our economy? So thank you for bringing it up, because a lot of people don't talk about the economical impact that it's having.
And it does. And then you look at all these NGOs. I was listening to a news program before I started the podcast, and this gentleman who was on was talking about the immigration racket. And I thought, it's really true, because there are NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that are making millions and millions of dollars, just like the ones in New York who are taking millions of dollars providing food for these illegals who are holed up in the hotels. And we're finding the unwrapped, untouched food in garbage cans. So as American
Well, I got something for that. Stay tuned this week. So
okay. Well, I'm just saying, as American taxpayers, we're forced to participate in this, Mark. I have no say in this. And if I don't pay my taxes, the IRS will come after me and beat down my doors. Under the Biden administration, I'm sure I'll be carted off for jail because I didn't pay $1,500 in taxes. Yet they're throwing away our money and we have no say in it. The majority of the people that I talk to feel like we have no representation in DC. And the reason I really wanted to have you on my show today is because I wanted people to hear everything that you've said for the last 30 minutes and how you understand what's happening. You grasp things in a way that a non-politician does. You've been boots on the ground, law enforcement agent. You understand the border situation. And beyond that, you understand the economic burden that American taxpayers have. So tell us what made you decide to run for Senate. And then I want to give you time to talk about where people could go to donate to you and your website and learn more about you.
Well, what made me run for Senate is God intervening in my life and making me feel compelled to do this. This was not on my list of things to do. My wife and I had a different plan. But we saw this country burning to the ground, and it is not in my nature to stand on the corner while the building burns to the ground. And there is a Danish saying that I love the saying, and it says, whoever has the ability has the responsibility. And like you said, I've been fighting this border issue now as a sheriff for going on in my 8th year. I've been fighting crime for nearly 2 decades. Over the last 7 years, I've managed over 600 employees and a budget of between 60 million and $100 million. And guess what? I stay in that budget and I balance that budget. And then national security, which is intertwined with border security. Our greatest threat to our national security is at our southern border right now. And you're not going to find a candidate in this race here in Arizona. You're not going to find a candidate in any position in Arizona that understands these issues to the depth that I do. And so what kind of person would I have been if I would have stood on the corner, having the ability and not accepting the responsibility? And ultimately, my wife and I just looked at each other and said, we got to do this. Many of you know I lost my kids in a DUI accident. Somebody struck and killed my son, my 22-year-old son, my 11-month-old granddaughter, and my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. In that time where we were trying to decide whether this was something we wanted to do. And when we kind of got through all of that, what we realized is there is no guarantee for tomorrow. And the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. And I'll be darned if under my watch, we're going to lose the country that our founding fathers sacrificed so much to give us, and so many other men and women have sacrificed to give us. And if I have to go to Washington, D.C., as repugnant as the thought of that is, then I'll do it, because I want to fight for freedom, and I want to fight for the American people, and I want to restore this country to the power of the people, we the people. And so I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and if you believe the same way I do, please come to sherifflandforsenate.com. You can donate a few bucks. If you live in Arizona, you can sign my petition. And look, some people say, well, I wish I live in Arizona, but I don't, so I can't donate. I can't help. Yes, you can.
Yes.
Because as a U.S. Senator, I don't just vote on Arizona. What I vote on affects all 50 states. The senator in Nevada or Florida or Iowa, they affect my life, my federal life, just as much as the senators do from Arizona. And so please come support us and share our messaging, because we got to take this country back. Look, folks, I'm not a politician. I'm a common man like the rest of you, and I'm fed up with it. So fed up that I decided to run for Senate. But I think it was ultimately God compelling us to do it.
And I know Mark personally, and I can say that everything he talks about is said straight from the heart. He's not a politician, and I back him up 100%. And I urge everybody else to. And like he said, if you don't live in Arizona, get online and donate, because the unfortunate thing about politics is money matters in a campaign. It just does. Tell the viewers, what is the number one thing that you want to take care of when you get to DC and become a senator?
Look, number one, you cannot let another day go by, even though this administration is, without securing our border. That is number one issue, has to be the border. And it's got to start day one of taking the Senate and the House back and the presidency back. All three branches of government have to stand together and work together to stop this border crisis. And the biggest two things is you got to hold people accountable, and you got to get back to the Remain in Mexico program. No more asylum claims where you wait 5 to 7 years here. We also got to get the economy started up, jump started immediately. And you've heard President Trump talk about it. Drill, baby, drill. You've got to get back to nuclear energy, coal, fracking. Those are the things that work, and we've got to get back to it. And we've got to get our energy independence back, because our economy sucks, because it takes energy to make a product, to ship it, and to sell it. And frankly, these people are not going to pass that. They're not going to eat that cost increase themselves. Vanguards, BlackRocks, those companies, they're going to pass that on to us, the consumer, either in the way of higher prices or like the government does in the way of inflation. So those are two of the really important issues that we have got to restore, and that the federal government should be working on, because that is their responsibility, to protect us from an invasion, to secure us. The Constitution and the preamble of the Constitution lays out very, very succinctly what our federal government is supposed to do, right in the preamble, when it said, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. So you got to believe in the rule of law and support it. You got to, and to ensure the domestic tranquility, which goes right along with it, to provide for the common defense. Our military is struggling, and they're not securing our border. We're being invaded, and they're not doing anything about it. To promote the general welfare, not provide. We're not a state or a government where we should be providing everything for people. We promote the general welfare. And the last thing is, we got to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. So those are the things that we should be focused on as a federal government. And I know, from being around you and knowing you, Mark is going to be the perfect guy to go to DC because of his $1 million smile. He's going to be able to persuade the Democrats any way he needs to persuade them. And we're going to be able to get things done in DC with Mark Lamb representing us here in Arizona. I don't know if we've lost him permanently, but being out on the side of the road is sometimes tough. There you are. I'm sorry, and I got a phone call and it knocked me off for a second. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, I know that you'll be able to work, with the Democrats on the other side of the aisle. You've got the truth on your side. You've got the knowledge behind you. And I really feel like a personality like yours will go, 100 miles further than somebody who comes across as a bureaucrat or a politician. So I wish you all the
Well,
luck.
thank you.
I'm pulling for you.
And
And
thank you.
yes, and we
And
appreciate
to
you
that point,
as our
just to that
sheriff.
one point, because your son was a police officer and you know this. If your house is on fire, or you have thieves in your house, or there's a domestic situation where mom and dad can't get along, you don't call a politician. You call your local sheriff or you call the police. You know why? Because we're trained and experienced in restoring balance and order to chaos. And we have a chaos in this country. We have chaos in Washington, D.C. And you need people that are trained and experienced in restoring balance and order. Politics don't matter at that point. What matters is restoring balance and order to this country. And we do that by injecting God and the Constitution back in and adhering to those things. And so thank you for the support, Marianne. Thank you for just the passion that you have and for fighting for not just for the border security, but fighting for America, fighting for this profession, which is, I think, the most honorable profession. Thank you for everything you do. And it's honor to be alongside of you when you do those things. And it's an honor to be your friend.
Thank you, Mark. Give them your website one more time.
SheriffLambforSenate.com or SheriffLamb.com. Either one will get you there. Please go there today and support where you can. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Mark. Thank you for coming on and taking the time today.
Thank you, Marianne. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. So, I don't know why, but I get emails from the Democratic National Committee, and I see what they're doing and the emails that they're pushing out to people. And this was on my campaign email. And so I see their strategy. And, people like Mark Lamb and myself, the Democrats, what they do is they get people to donate $5, $10, $15, $20 on a reoccurring monthly basis until the elections. And when you add up all that type of money, that's a lot of money going to a candidate and helping them out with their campaign. And Mark Lamb deserves, the help that he needs. They've got some pretty big money going against, some of his opponents here. And I've been behind Mark since the day that he announced that he was running for this senatorial position. We've got two really crappy senators here in Arizona. We've got Kirsten Sinema, who she doesn't even know what she is. She ran as a Democrat, but now she's trying to get, be an independent. You've got Mark Kelly, who's a Democrat. I haven't even heard anything about Mark Kelly in months. So I don't even know what he's doing. If he's in DC, if he's participating in things, I have no idea. You never hear anything about him. So we've really got to back good people up like Mark. And that's why I said, I wanted to have him on the show, because to give you people the opportunity to hear how he feels about things, how he views things, what he thinks is the most important thing that he needs to do when he gets into DC. And he's just an all around great guy. What's funny too is, Brandon, my son, around the beat, his beat that he was on in the park area that he revitalized and got a lot of the drug dealers and homeless people settled into shelters and stuff, and made the community feel safer that he was working in. He got the nickname Hollywood from the mothers and the daughters who lived in that area. And if they heard that he was on duty, the girls would run in the house and get their makeup on and get their hair fixed. And it was pretty funny hearing all of these stories from the mothers and the daughters themselves after my son had been killed. And I remember one time talking to Mark Lamb and him saying, somebody said, "Hey, Hollywood." And I'm like, wait, what? That's a nickname that he's been given to. He's got $1 million smile, but I'm telling you guys, he is the most genuine person. And I really felt compelled to have him on the show and let you guys experience his authentic self, is for lack of a better word to say. Anyway, we've got a lot of crime. I can't even believe the articles that I've been sent by this military mother who does a lot of research for me, and she's still sending 15, 25, 30 articles a day of all of this crime that's happening back on the East Coast, mainly in New York, and mainly by the Venezuelans. And a lot of these people are coming through Arizona. A lot of the Senegals, people from Pakistan, people from India, people from different countries in Africa. And then you've got the people from the Middle East crossing over the borders here. And it was pretty funny, not funny, but kind of scary, interesting. Ben Berkman was down at the border, and he actually put together this little contraption with a fishing pole and some sticky tape on the end of it, and was putting it through the border fence and pulling these IDs over. So as they're crossing over the border in southern Arizona, they're just dropping their IDs of the countries that they've come from. But and Ben was gathering them all because obviously that person came across the border, or they wouldn't have been dropping their ID and just losing it, because they want to be anonymous as they're coming into the United States. Their past is left behind. But Ben was gathering all of this to be able to give it to law enforcement, because that could give some insight into that person who stepped over our border and is now anonymous and maybe has a fake name, but there's a picture and there's a real name, and maybe there's a criminal database somewhere that would help law enforcement start identifying some of these people. So good work on Ben Berkman's behalf, doing the sort of things that he does. He's on a little break right now because he and his wife welcomed their third daughter. He has such a beautiful family. And I'm always so worried and scared for him when he's down there at the border doing all this crazy stuff. But anyway, interesting listening to a newscast before I started the podcast today. And like I was saying when I was talking to Mark Lem, they were talking about the human smuggling aspect becoming such a racket, the illegal immigration. And the amount of money that the cartel is making, $2 million a week, I think it's way more than that. But the amount of armored vehicles and body armor and weapons that they can buy with that money, it's obvious that they've taken over the country of Mexico. They're the ones running the place. Just like you've got the elites here in America running America. You really don't have an administration that is running the country anymore. It's become pretty scary. And if we don't start getting good politicians like Mark Lamb and people who have a soul and a heart, there's a lot of good candidates that are running down in Texas. I can't remember their names. It just kind of went out of my head, but a lot of good people that are running down there. Arizona, Texas, they're two of the states that the Democrats are really going after because they want to permanently change them to blue states. And we've got to stop that from happening. We have to regain the power, because the madness and the insanity that you hear on mainstream media and even some of these talk shows about how crazy and out of their minds conservatives are, I find it pretty interesting that our motto is "Make America Great Again." And how can you find anything wrong with that? How could that be a bad thing, to make anything great again? And especially America. To think that people attack that like it's something so terrible. Who wouldn't want to make their country great again? The people who want to overtake this country. And one of the things that Mark said was so right, because I'm so sick of listening to little snippets that Vice President Harris puts up on social media about our democracy. We're going to be losing our democracy. They want that embedded in people's brains so that when they're able to accomplish it, every little step that they're taking is trying to make this country into a democracy. And they will get their way and they will change it if we don't stand up now and make sure that we block their way from doing these terrible things to our country. A democracy is when the majority is in charge. And that is exactly why they want open borders. They're bringing in a new voter base. You've got Arizona, who we just had a judge last week uphold the fact that, okay, so the legislation and the Democratic representatives here in the state of Arizona, they push, Democrats do, that everybody who gets a driver's license is immediately registered to vote. And in the state of Arizona, you have to prove that you are a legal citizen in order to vote in our state elections. And we tried to pass a law where you had to prove you were a citizen in order to vote in federal elections. Well, of course, ACLU, all these places, they filed all these lawsuits. And so the court just upheld last week that you don't have to prove you're a citizen to vote in the federal elections. You don't have to prove you're a citizen to vote in the federal elections. That's the way it is in Arizona. How is it in your state? How is it across this nation? How many states are allowing this to happen? And one of our state representatives, who was a Democrat, this bill never saw the light of day down there at the Capitol last session, but she wanted to say that anybody, if you didn't want them voting, then you could challenge them and take them to court and figure out, have them prove that they were an illegal or not, or a citizen or not. She was making it harder to prove that these people shouldn't be voting. Where in any realm of reality as an American citizen would anybody feel that a foreigner, an illegal one at that, should be able to come into our country and have a say into who is our president? The deranged Democrats are the ones who want that to happen, obviously, because they want to stay in power. They want to grow their base because they know Americans, and especially the Black community, are disillusioned with what they've done to this country. And so they did this on purpose to grow their base and to have these people, once again, a whole nother new group of people who are dependent on the government to help and provide for them. And those are the promises they'll make every election year, like they have for the past how many years? Promise the Black community so many things. But they're bringing people in from countries who are used to the government taking care of them. The Venezuelans, they come over and they say, yeah, we came here so we can get a car and a house and a job because the government gives you everything. And Biden promised us all this stuff. They come here with expectations that are unrealistic. And then you have them all concentrated in places like New York and Chicago and these big cities where they think there's going to be more opportunity. But they also are drawn to those cities because they're sanctuary cities and they know there'll be less accountability for them as illegal criminals. But they're brought there. And then the frustration level starts boiling under the surface because they're not getting what they need. They're not getting what they think they were promised. They're not getting what they think that they deserve. And so this kind of stuff starts bubbling under the surface, and then it starts erupting into what? Utter chaos. And then you've got all of these Venezuelans who are crossing our border who are part of this more violent than the MS-13 gangs. Those are permeating our country and our big cities like New York and Chicago. What is going to be happening in the next, year or two? And then you get conservatives back into office and you're trying to bring some semblance of, order back into our country, back into our lives, back into our communities. And then there's another form of upheaval and protest and fighting and stuff because these people don't want that. They want the utter chaos and they want the criminal aspect and the crime to be able to happen and for politicians and law enforcement to turn a blind eye. This is exactly what the Democratic Party has turned this country into. And this is exactly why I'm going to be fighting. This is exactly why Mark Lamb wants to get to DC and fight. He understands the aspect from law enforcement. He understands the illegal immigration aspect. He understands the impact that it has on our economy. And these are the people you need to be researching in your communities to make sure you're voting for the right people to get into office. I appreciate you joining me today. We've run out of time. I'm actually going to be running a little over, but I appreciate you joining me. I hope you enjoyed listening to Mark Lamb. If you didn't get to catch the whole thing, please start at the beginning, because he's a wonderful man to listen to, and he had a lot of great things, great information to pass on to people. And tomorrow I'll be on my own, and I'm going to just be talking about some important issues facing the country. And then right away next Tuesday on the 23rd, we are being joined by Andy Biggs. So I hope you all have a great evening, and I will see you tomorrow.